Denise Carter limped through Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her hip screaming from an old crash, begging flight attendant Tiffany Reed for boarding help on her Seattle flight. Tiffany smirked, snapping, "Wait your turn," her eyes cold. Then Captain Jordan Carter emerged, scanned the gate and said, "That's my mom." Tiffany's face froze, arrogance melting into panic as a passenger hissed, "She's in deep now." What started as a simple request spiraled into a moment that would haunt them all forever. What happens next? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this one. Denise Carter stood at the gate in Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her carry-on bag digging into her shoulder, her right hip throbbing like a drumbeat with every shift of her weight. The sting of Tiffany Reed's dismissal still burned in her chest, that sharp "wait your turn" echoing in her ears as she gripped her boarding pass tight enough to crinkle the edges. At 55, she'd faced her share of slights as a black historian digging into America's uglier chapters, but this one cut deeper. Maybe because of the casual venom in Tiffany's pale blue eyes, or maybe because her son Jordan had just stepped into the fray. He towered beside her now, 6'2" in his crisp captain's uniform, 4 gold stripes gleaming on his shoulders, his voice steady but edged with fury as he demanded, "Explain yourself, Tiffany. Why'd you deny my mom assistance?" Denise leaned closer to him, her breath uneven from the pain radiating down her leg, and murmured, "It's my hip, Jordan. Old accident acting up today. I just needed a hand getting on." Her voice was calm, a scholar's precision masking the ache, but her dark brown eyes flicked to Tiffany, watching the flight attendant's perfect blonde ponytail bob as she tilted her chin defiantly. Tiffany crossed her arms, her navy blazer creasing at the elbows, and let out a huff that sounded more like a scoff. "Policy's clear, Captain. We only board priority passengers or those with documented disabilities early. She didn't show me any proof, so I told her to wait. Simple as that." Her lips curled into a thin, practiced smile, the kind you'd see on a customer service poster, but her gaze darted over Denise like she was sizing up a stray dog begging for scraps. Jordan's jaw tightened, his broad hands flexing at his sides, and he stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking on the terminal floor. "She's in pain, Tiffany. You don't need a doctor's note to see that. Help her board now. That's an order." His tone carried the weight of a man who'd earned his wings through 12 years of grit, a black pilot in a field that rarely welcomed faces like his, and Denise felt a swell of pride despite the throbbing in her hip. She adjusted her modest, gray blazer, silver streaks glinting in her coiled hair under the harsh airport lights, and waited for Tiffany to back down. Instead, Tiffany's smile vanished, her face hardening like concrete setting in the Texas heat. She leaned in close, too close, her breath brushing Jordan's ear as she muttered, "I don't take orders from your kind." The words laced with a venom that made Denise's stomach twist. She didn't hear it, not fully, but a passenger, nearby, a lanky guy in a Cowboys jersey fumbling with his phone, caught every syllable. His thumb hesitated over the screen, then tapped record, and within seconds, the clip was live, racing across X like wildfire. Gasps rippled through the gate area, a woman in a red scarf whispering, "Did she just say that?" as heads swiveled toward Tiffany. Denise caught the shift, the sudden spotlight, and for a fleeting moment she thought this might turn the tide, that exposure would force accountability. Her lips parted to speak, to call out the slur she hadn't quite heard but felt in her bones when 2 airport security guards stormed through the crowd, their boots pounding the tile like a drum roll. The taller guard, a beefy man with a buzz cut and a badge reading Hicks, grabbed Denise's arm without a word, his grip iron tight around her elbow. "Ma'am, you're coming with us," he barked, his voice a gravelly drawl, while the second guard, shorter and wiry with a patchy beard, snatched her carry-on from her hand. Jordan lunged forward, his captain's hat tilting as he shouted, "She's my mother, let her go, she didn't do anything." But Hicks shoved him back, chest puffing out like a rooster ready to crow. "Step off, Captain, or you're next. We got a call about a disturbance and she's the source." Denise's heart slammed against her ribs, her hips screaming as Hicks yanked her toward the terminal's edge, away from the gate. She twisted, her head, catching Tiffany's smirk, a flicker of triumph in those icy eyes, and realized the flight attendant had tipped them off, spinning this into something uglier than a simple denial. The gate blurred behind her, passengers craning their necks, some pulling out phones, others muttering under their breath. A teenage girl in braids tapped furiously on her screen, posting, "Security just grabbed this lady for no reason. What's happening?" As Denise stumbled to keep up, her good leg dragging to compensate for the bad one. Jordan's voice boomed after her. "I'm delaying this flight if you don't release her." But the guards didn't flinch, hauling her through a set of double doors into a stark hallway lined with flickering fluorescent tubes. The air smelled of stale coffee and sweat, and Denise's mind raced, piecing together the shift. Tiffany's slur, caught on video, had gone viral, and now she was the one paying the price. She straightened her spine, drawing on decades of facing down prejudice, and thought, "They'll have to let me go soon. This is too public to hold." Her breath steadied, a flicker of hope sparking as she imagined the online outrage forcing their hand. But then Hicks shoved her toward a metal door marked "Security Holding," and the wiry guard muttered into his radio, "Suspect detained. Possible threat." Denise's hope snuffed out like a candle in a storm. She turned to Hicks, her voice sharp despite the tremble in her hands. "Threat? I asked for help boarding a plane, that's all." He didn't answer, just pushed her inside, the door clanging shut behind her. The room was a concrete box, 10 feet by 10, with a single chair bolted to the floor and a camera blinking red in the corner. She sank onto the seat, her hip pulsing with every heartbeat, and stared at the lens, knowing someone was watching. Outside, she couldn't see Jordan arguing with the shift manager, a hulking figure named Greg Larson who'd just arrived, his tie loose and his face flushed from a late lunch. "Captain Carter, you delay this flight, you're risking your wings," Greg growled, his meaty hand jabbing at Jordan's chest. "Your mom's a problem, and we're handling it." Back in the holding room, Denise rubbed her arm where Hicks had gripped her, the skin already bruising under her sleeve. She thought of her lectures at the university, the ones where she traced slavery's echoes through modern systems, and felt a bitter laugh bubble up. This was her research in real time, a case study in power and prejudice. But it didn't dull, the fear creeping up her spine. The door swung open again and Hicks loomed over her, his shadow swallowing the light. "We're searching you," he said. No explanation, no warrant, just a command. She stood, wincing as her hip protested, and said, "This is illegal, you know that." He smirked, a crooked twist of his lips, and nodded to the wiry guard who stepped forward with gloved hands. "Procedure, ma'am. Gotta make sure you're not hiding anything." The search was quick but invasive, hands patting down her sides, lifting her blazer, digging into pockets she'd emptied herself. Denise bit her lip, forcing her mind to detach, to catalog this like data. The guard's grunt as he found nothing, the way Hicks watched with narrowed eyes, the humiliation of it all. When they finished, Hicks tossed her carry-on onto the chair, unzipped and rifled through, and said, "You're free to go, for now." She grabbed the bag, her fingers trembling as she slung it over her shoulder, and limped back toward the gate, the hallway stretching endlessly before her. She thought she'd dodged the worst, that Jordan's threat to delay the flight had pressured them into letting her loose. The terminal buzzed as she emerged, passengers still milling around, some pointing as she passed. Jordan rushed to her, his face a mask of relief and rage, pulling her into a hug that made her wince but not pull away. "Mom, you okay? I told them I'd ground this plane if they didn't let you go." She nodded, forcing a smile. But then a gate agent approached, a wiry woman with a pinched face, and said, "Ms. Carter, we've got an issue. Your luggage didn't make the flight. It's, misplaced." Denise's stomach dropped, her hand tightening on her carry-on. "Misplaced? How?" The agent shrugged, avoiding her eyes, and shuffled off. Jordan cursed under his breath, but before he could chase her down, Denise's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting support from the viral video, and saw X lighting up, but not with allies. A flood of posts called her a troublemaker, a race baiter, with one trending hashtag, "Guys Disruptive Denise." She scrolled, her throat tightening, and saw a blurry photo of her being hauled off, captioned, "Entitled Passenger Delays Flight." Tiffany's slur was buried under a wave of lies, and Denise realized this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Denise Carter barely had time to catch her breath before the airport security guards, Hicks and his wiry sidekick, spun her around like a rag doll, their meaty hands clamping onto her wrists with a force that made her gasp. Her hip flared hotter than a Texas summer. Each step toward the holding room a jolt of agony as Jordan's voice faded behind her, drowned by the terminal's hum. "She's my mother, let her go," he roared, his captain's authority cracking against their indifference. But Hicks just snorted, dragging her through those double doors like she was livestock headed to slaughter. The hallway's stark white walls closed in, the air thick with disinfectant and something sour, and Denise's mind spun, grappling with how fast this had spiraled. Hadn't that video of Tiffany's slur gone viral? Weren't people watching? She clung to that thought, her historian's brain ticking through the odds, betting on public pressure to spring her loose. But as Hicks shoved her into that concrete cell, the red camera light winking like a predator's eye, she felt the first cold prickle of doubt. The taller guard loomed over her, his buzz cut casting a jagged shadow across the floor, while the wiry one leaned against the wall, cracking, his knuckles like this was a game. "You're a problem, lady," Hicks growled, his voice low and mean, "and we don't like problems." Denise straightened, ignoring the stab in her hip, and met his stare with the steel she'd honed over decades of lectures and protests. "I'm no problem. I asked for help boarding a plane and your flight attendant turned it into this. Check the footage. It's all over X by now." Hicks smirked, a greasy twist of his mouth, and nodded to his partner. "Oh, we've got footage. All right, Tiffany says you looked threatening, like you might start something, that's why we're here." Denise's stomach lurched, her breath catching as the lie sank in. Threatening? Her, a 55-year-old professor in a gray blazer and sensible flats? She opened her mouth to argue, but the wiry guard cut in. Strip search time. Standard for troublemakers. Her heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic rhythm she couldn't slow, as Hicks stepped closer, his boots scuffing the floor. "This is wrong," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You've got no cause, no warrant." He chuckled, a sound like gravel crunching under tires, and said, "Cause? You're a black woman mouthing off at a gate. That's cause enough around here." The words hit like a slap, raw and unfiltered, and before she could protest, they were on her. The wiry guard yanked her blazer off, tossing it onto the chair, while Hicks patted her down, his gloved hands lingering over her hips, her thighs, her chest. Denise clenched her jaw, forcing her mind to float above the violation. But when his fingers brushed the scars on her lower back, jagged lines from that car wreck 20 years ago, she flinched. He noticed, smirking wider, and muttered, "Rough life, huh?" She didn't answer, staring at the wall, counting the cracks to keep from screaming. Outside, Jordan was a storm in human form, pacing the gate area, his fists balled as he faced off with Greg Larson, the shift manager who'd swaggered in with a half-chewed toothpick dangling from his lips. Greg was a wall of a man, 6'4" with a gut that strained his cheap button-up, his ruddy face glistening from too much coffee or too little sleep. "Captain Carter, you're this close to losing your stripes," he snarled, jabbing a sausage-thick finger at Jordan's chest. "Your mom's a liability, stirring up trouble, and I'm not having it delay my flight." Jordan didn't back down, his voice cutting through the terminal noise. "She's not the trouble. Your flight attendant is, and now your guards are holding her for nothing. Let her go, or this plane doesn't move." Greg's eyes narrowed, a flicker of calculation behind them, but he waved a hand dismissively. "She'll be out soon. Just a little chat with security. Cool your jets, Captain." Back in the holding room, the search dragged on, a slow torture of rustling fabric and muttered taunts. They tore through her carry-on next, dumping her books, her laptop, her spare sweater onto the floor, pages crumpling under their boots. Hicks held up a worn copy of her own book, Chains of Silence, Racism in Modern Institutions, and snorted. Fancy stuff for a troublemaker. Denise bit her tongue, tasting copper as they finally stepped back, leaving her to gather her things. "You're clear," Hicks said, his tone mocking. "But don't push your luck." She zipped her bag, her hands shaking, and limped out, each step a battle against the pain and the humiliation still burning in her gut. The hallway stretched longer than before, the fluorescent buzz drilling into her skull, but she told herself it was over. They'd let her go. The video was out. There, Jordan was waiting. She'd board that plane and leave this nightmare behind. The gate area hit her like a wave when she emerged. The crowd thicker now, a sea of faces staring, pointing, whispering. Jordan rushed over, his arms wrapping around her in a hug that smelled of jet fuel and worry. "Mom, thank God. You okay? I told them I'd ground this flight if they didn't release you." She nodded, her throat tight, and managed. "I'm fine, just bruised. Let's get on that plane." But as they turned toward the jet bridge, a ripple of unease cut through. Her relief, the gate agent from before, the pinched-face woman scurried up, her clipboard clutched like a shield. "Ms. Carter, slight problem. Your checked bag, the one with your clothes and notes, it's lost. We're not sure where it went." Denise's jaw dropped, her mind racing. "Lost? It was right there at check-in." The agent shrugged, her eyes sliding away, and vanished into the throng before Jordan could grab her. Denise fished her phone from her pocket, her fingers clumsy with exhaustion, and opened X to see the video's reach. It had exploded, all right. Over 50,000 views in an hour, but the tide had turned. Beneath the clip of Tiffany's slur, a flood of comments painted a different picture. "Typical entitled passenger," one read. "Delaying flights for attention," said another. A grainy photo of her being dragged off trended with "Talker disruptive Denise," and a post with 2,000 likes claimed, "She threatened the crew. Got what she deserved." Her breath hitched, a sharp pain unrelated to her hip, as she scrolled through the lies. Someone had flipped the script, buried Tiffany's racism under a smear campaign, and Denise knew who. She glanced at Jordan, his face darkening as he peeked over her shoulder and whispered, "They're not done with us, are they?" He shook his head, his voice grim. "Not by a long shot. Hey folks, what do you think about this twist? Comment number 1 if you're raging at how they've twisted Denise's story, or number 2 if you think she should have fought harder back there. Hit that like button if you're hooked on this roller coaster and subscribe to catch every brutal turn ahead. How far will these snakes go to bury the truth? Will Denise and Jordan outsmart them, or is something even darker waiting on that plane? Stick around to find out. Denise Carter shuffled down the jet bridge, her hip a pulsing knot of fire, her carry-on dragging behind her like a stubborn child as Jordan guided her toward the plane. The terminal's chaos faded into a muffled roar, but the sting of that smear campaign still gnawed at her, those X-posts branding her Daesh disruptive Denise flashing in her mind. She leaned into Jordan's steady arm, his captain's jacket brushing her shoulder, and muttered, "We're getting out of here, right? This mess can't follow us on board." He nodded, his jaw tight, and said, "I've got you, Mom. I'll sort this with the airline once we're in Seattle." His voice carried a promise, forged in years of overcoming doubters in flight school, and Denise let herself believe it, her historian skepticism softening under his resolve. They stepped into the Airbus A320, the cabin air cool and sharp, with that recycled tang, and she sank into seat 14B, a premium economy spot she'd paid extra for, hoping the legroom might ease her pain. The plane filled fast, passengers bustling past with rolling bags and tired sighs, their eyes flicking toward her, some with curiosity, others with something colder. Denise adjusted her blazer, smoothing the wrinkles from the security tussle, and pulled out her phone, the screen still glowing with venomous posts. She swiped them away, focusing on Jordan up front, his broad shoulders visible as he slipped into the cockpit. She'd raised him alone, pouring late nights into grading papers while he built model planes, and now he commanded this beast of steel and sky. A flicker of pride warmed her chest, dulling the ache for a moment, until Greg Larson lumbered aboard, his bulk clogging the aisle like a boulder in a stream. The shift manager's tie hung crooked, his shirt untucked over a belly that jiggled with each step, and his small, mean eyes locked onto her like a hawk spotting prey. Greg stopped at her row, his breath heavy with onions and cheap whiskey, and leaned down, his voice a low rumble. "Ms. Carter, you're lucky to be here after that stunt at the gate. Captain Carter's on thin ice and I'm watching." Denise met his stare, her spine stiffening despite the tremor in her leg. "My son's flying this plane, Greg. You'd do well to remember that." He smirked, a flash of yellowed teeth, and straightened up, waddling toward the galley where Tiffany Reed stood, her blonde ponytail swishing as she whispered something to him. Denise caught the glint in Tiffany's eyes, a predator's glee, and her stomach twisted. She turned to Jordan's silhouette in the cockpit, trusting he'd shield her, when Greg's voice boomed over the intercom, cutting through the pre-flight. Folks, slight change. Captain Carter's stepping down to co-pilot today. Safety concern per crew reports. Captain Hayes will take over." The cabin erupted in murmurs, head swiveling toward Denise, and she froze, her breath catching. As Jordan stormed out of the cockpit, his face a thundercloud. "What the hell, Greg? I'm cleared to fly, you know that." Greg crossed his arms, his smirk widening. "Tiffany says your mom distracted you at the gate, got you riled up. Can't risk it, Captain. Hayes is in charge now." Denise's heart sank, her hands clenching the armrests as Jordan's rank slipped away over a lie Tiffany had spun, her smug nod from the galley confirming it. Jordan's fists balled, but Hayes, a wiry gray-haired vet, clapped his shoulder and muttered, "Let it go, kid. I've got this." Jordan shot Denise a look, a mix of fury and apology, and retreated to the co-pilot's seat, leaving her exposed in the cabin's crosshairs. The plane taxied, engines whining as it rolled toward the runway, and Denise felt the shift in the air, a current of hostility rippling through the rows. A guy in a plaid shirt 2 seats ahead twisted around, his sunburned face screwed up in a sneer. "You the one who got the captain demoted? Some people don't know their place." Before she could snap back, he hawked a glob of spit that landed on her tray table, a wet splat that made her recoil. Gasps mixed with chuckles around her, and she glanced at Tiffany, who stood by the galley, her lips twitching upward as she pretended to adjust a cart. Denise grabbed a napkin, wiping the mess with trembling hands, and pulled out her phone, thumbing the camera on. She hit record, panning from the spit to plaid shirt guy, then posted it to X with a caption. "This is what they're defending." The clip uploaded fast, racking up retweets, and she thought, "Let them see the truth." The plane lifted off, the Dallas skyline shrinking below, and Denise watched her post climb, supporters chiming in with fire emojis and "We stand with you." She exhaled, a sliver of control returning, until the Wi-Fi icon blinked out. A crackle over the intercom followed, Greg's voice smug and thick. "Folks, we've disabled internet access for this flight. Technical glitch, nothing to worry about." Her screen froze, the post stuck mid-refresh, and she realized Greg had cut her lifeline, trapping her voice 38,000 feet up. Passengers grumbled, but the guy in plaid clapped, muttering, "Good riddance." Denise's pulse raced, her eyes darting to Tiffany, who now strolled the aisle, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom. She stopped at Denise's row, leaning in with a fake pout. "Need anything, ma'am?" "Shame about that Wi-Fi, huh?" Denise bit back a retort, her mind racing. She'd exposed the spit, gained traction, but Greg and Tiffany had countered hard, silencing her mid-flight. She glanced out the window, the clouds a gray smear against the glass, and tried to steady her breathing. Jordan was up there, demoted but safe, and she clung to that, whispering to herself, "We'll fight this on the ground." The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dinging off, and she leaned back, her hip throbbing in time with her heartbeat. She thought she'd hit the bottom, that this was the worst they could throw, when a woman in a floral dress slipped past Tiffany, her eyes avoiding Denise's as she pressed a folded note into her hand. Denise unfolded it, her fingers stiff, and read the scrawled words. "They're planning worse. Watch your back." The woman darted away, vanishing into the bathroom, and Denise's throat closed up. The cabin suddenly too small, too loud, too alive with unseen threats. She tucked the note into her pocket, her gaze flicking between Tiffany's fake smile and Greg's hulking shadow near the galley. What did worse mean? Hadn't they already stripped her dignity, her son's rank, her voice? She scanned the passengers, searching for allies, but found only averted eyes or hostile glares. A kid in a hoodie stared at his tablet, oblivious, while an older man in a suit coughed into his sleeve, indifferent. The plane droned on, cutting through the sky toward Boise, and Denise gripped her armrests, her nails digging into the fabric. She'd fought bigger battles, traced slavery's scars through dusty archives, faced down tenure boards who sneered at her work. She could handle this, she told herself, but the note's warning gnawed at her, a splinter under her skin. Jordan's demotion was a gut punch, the spit a public shaming, but something bigger loomed, something she couldn't see yet. The fasten seatbelt sign flickered back on, a faint turbulence jostling the cabin, and she braced herself, knowing whatever came next would hit harder than anything before. Denise Carter sat rigid in seat 14B, the crumpled note from the woman in the floral dress burning a hole in her pocket as the Airbus A320 sliced through the sky above Idaho. The cabin lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the rows, and the recycled air tasted stale, heavy with the weight of that warning. They're planning worse. Her hip ached, a dull roar beneath her skin, but it was nothing compared to the dread coiling in her gut. Jordan was up front, demoted to co-pilot, his captain's stripes stripped by Greg Larson's greasy hands, and she could still hear the echo of that plaid-shirted passenger's spit hitting her tray table, a wet slap of contempt. She glanced, out the window, the landscape below a patchwork of brown fields and jagged peaks, and tried to anchor herself. They'd land in Seattle soon. She'd fight this on solid ground, expose Tiffany and Greg with the footage she'd posted before the Wi-Fi cut out, but the plane's hum felt wrong, too steady, like the calm before a storm she couldn't predict. Greg's voice crackled over the intercom, slicing through her thoughts, thick and smug as bacon grease. "Folks, slight change of plans. We're making an unscheduled stop in Boise due to a passenger issue. Sit tight, we'll be on the ground in 20. Denise's head snapped up, her pulse spiking as passengers groaned, their annoyance a low buzz around her. She caught Tiffany Reed's silhouette near the galley, her blonde ponytail swaying as she leaned into Greg, whispering something that made him nod. Denise's fingers tightened on the note, her mind racing. A passenger issue? After the gate, the search, the demotion. This had her name written all over it. She craned her neck searching for Jordan, but the cockpit door stayed shut, a steel wall between them. The plane tilted, descending fast, and she pressed her forehead to the cool glass, watching Boise's lights flicker into view. A trap she couldn't escape. The cabin shifted, a restless energy rippling through, and Tiffany strutted down the aisle, her heels clicking with purpose. She stopped at Denise's row, her lips pursed in a mock frown, and said, "Ms. Carter, you'll need to deplane in Boise. You've disrupted crew harmony, and we can't have that." Denise's breath hitched, her voice sharp as she shot back. "Disrupted? You mean exposing your spit-throwing fan club? I've done nothing but sit here." Tiffany's eyes glinted, cold and hard, and she leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "You stole a headset, lady, found it in your bag. That's theft, and you're off this plane." Denise's jaw dropped, her hand flying to her carry-on, unzipping it in a frantic sweep. There, tucked beneath her sweater, was a sleek airline headset, its cord coiled like a snake. "I didn't take this. You planted it," she snapped. But Tiffany just smirked, stepping back as Greg lumbered over, his bulk blocking the aisle. "Enough, Carter," Greg growled, his meaty hand waving off her protest. "You're done. Boise's your stop." Denise's chest heaved, her mind scrambling for a way out when the cockpit door banged open. Jordan stormed out, his co-pilot's hat askew, his dark eyes blazing. "She's not going anywhere, Greg. I'm locking this bird down unless you back off." His voice carried the weight of a man who'd flown through storms, literal and otherwise, and Denise felt a surge of hope, her son standing tall against the tide. Greg's face reddened, his jowls quivering, but he barked, "Hayes, get your co-pilot in line." Captain Hayes poked his head out, his gray hair mussed, and sighed. "Jordan, stand down. We're landing anyway." Jordan hesitated, his fists clenching, then slammed the cockpit door shut, the lock clicking with a finality that echoed in Denise's ears. The plane hit turbulence, a sharp jolt that sent trays rattling, and the cabin erupted. Plaid shirt guy stood, his sunburned face twisted as he yelled, "Get her off! She's trouble!" A woman in a green sweater shouted back, "Leave her alone, you jerk!" And the air crackled with tension. Denise clutched her armrests, her hip screaming as the plane dipped again, when a burly man in a leather jacket lunged across the aisle, his fist swinging at green sweater lady. She ducked, screaming, and chaos exploded, passengers shoving, cursing, a tangle of limbs and rage. Denise spotted a kid, maybe 10, cowering in 15C, his wide eyes locked on the fight, and she lurched forward, ignoring the pain, shielding him with her body. A stray elbow caught her cheek, splitting the skin, and blood trickled warm down her face, staining her blazer. She held the boy tight, his small hands gripping her sleeve, until the plane shuddered onto Boise's tarmac, tires screeching against asphalt. The seatbelt sign blinked off, and Greg's voice boomed again. "Ms. Carter, exit now. Everyone else, stay put." Denise stood, her legs shaky, the boy's mom rushing over with a tearful "thank you." She nodded, wiping blood from her eye, and grabbed her carry-on, thinking, "I'm off this hellhole. They can't do worse than this." Jordan emerged, his face pale, and whispered, "Mom, I tried. I'll fix this." She squeezed his arm, limping toward the jet bridge. The cabin's jeers fading behind her. Relief washed over her, cool and fleeting, as she stepped onto Boise soil, the night air crisp against her bruised cheek. She'd survived the flight, protected a kid, dodged their frame-up. She turned to Jordan, ready to plan their next move, when 3 local cops swarmed her, their badges glinting under the terminal lights. "Denise Carter, you're under arrest," the lead cop snapped. A stocky man with a buzz cut and a scar across his chin. Her stomach dropped, her bag slipping from her hand as he twisted her arms behind her, cuffs biting into her wrists. "Assault? What assault?" she choked out, her voice raw. But he shoved her toward a squad car, his grip bruising her already sore skin. "Caught on camera, ma'am. You hit a passenger mid-flight." Jordan charged forward, shouting, "That's a lie. She shielded a kid, not attacked anyone." But the cops pushed him back, one drawing a baton. Denise twisted, catching Tiffany's smirk from the jet bridge, her phone flashing as she filmed. The realization hit like a brick. They'd doctored the footage, turned her defense into a crime. The cop car's door slammed shut, the interior reeking of sweat and vinyl, and she stared through the window at Jordan's helpless fury. The airport, lights blurring as they sped away. Her mind reeled, piecing it together. Greg had called ahead, Tiffany had planted the headset, and now this, a frame-up bigger than the gate denial or the spit. Her cheek throbbed, blood crusting along the cut, and her hip felt like it might snap. But the real pain was the betrayal, the system twisting her every move into a noose. She'd thought Boise was her escape, a chance to regroup, but it was a trap, deeper and darker than the plane. The cop in the driver's seat glanced back, his eyes flat and unreadable, and muttered, "Shoulda stayed quiet, lady." Denise pressed her forehead to the glass, the city's edges smearing past, and whispered to herself, "They won't break me." But as the car turned toward the station, the weight of what came next pressed down, heavier than ever. Denise Carter slumped against the cold metal bench in the Boise jail's interrogation room, her wrists raw from the cuffs that had bitten into her skin during the ride from the airport. The air stank of mildew and burnt coffee, the flickering bulb overhead buzzing like a trapped fly, and her hip throbbed with a vengeance, each pulse a reminder of the chaos that had landed her here. Blood crusted along her cheek from that mid-flight elbow, a dark smear she couldn't wipe away, and her blazer hung limp, stained with sweat and shame. The cops had hauled her in on assault charges, a lie spun from the plane's brawl where she'd shielded a kid, not thrown a punch. She replayed it in her mind, the boy's terrified grip on her sleeve, the blur of fists, and Tiffany Reed's smirk as she filmed from the jet bridge. This was their counterattack, a frame-up tighter than the security search, and Denise's stomach churned, knowing Greg Larson and Tiffany had orchestrated it all. The door creaked open, and a new cop swaggered in, a lanky man with a hawkish nose and a badge reading Officer Tate. He dropped a tablet on the table, its screen glowing with grainy footage from the plane, and leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Got you dead to rights, Carter," he drawled, tapping the play button. The video rolled, showing the fight in jerky cuts, but it wasn't right. There she was, shielding the kid, but the angle shifted, her arm blurred into what looked like a swing at the burly guy in leather. The kid vanished from the frame, and her voice pleading, "Stay back," was dubbed over with a snarl. "Get out of my way!" Denise's jaw dropped, her breath catching as she lunged forward, ignoring the stab in her hip. "That's fake. I didn't hit anyone. I protected a child. You've edited this." Tate smirked, his thin lips curling, and said, "Looks real to me. Witnesses say you started it. That flight attendant, Tiffany, she swears you're violent." Denise's hands shook, her historian's mind racing to dissect the lie. Witnesses? Tiffany had been at the jet bridge, not in the cabin, and Greg had been too busy cutting Wi-Fi to see anything. She leaned closer, her voice steady despite the fury boiling inside. "Check the full footage, not this chop job. Passengers filmed it, it's on X, I've got proof." Tate's smirk widened, and he slid a photo across the table, a still of her with the planted headset from her bag. "Proof? Like this? Theft and assault, Carter. You're a regular menace." Her chest tightened, the trap snapping shut, and she realized they'd planned this from Dallas, every step a brick in their wall. The door swung open again, and Greg lumbered in, his shirt stained with ketchup from some late-night burger, his small eyes glinting with triumph. "Told you, Tate. She's trouble. Got a bribe for you, too. Make sure she stays put." Tate pocketed a wad of cash, his fingers brushing the bills like a lover's caress, and Denise's stomach lurched, bile rising in her throat. "You're buying him?" she spat, her voice cracking. "This is corruption, not justice." Greg chuckled, a wet guttural sound, and leaned down, his breath hot on her face. "Justice? For you? Sit tight, Professor. We're just getting started." He waddled out, leaving Tate to cuff her again, the metal clicking tighter this time, and she sank back, her mind spinning. She'd faced racism before, subtle jabs in faculty lounges, but this was a machine, grinding her down with every gear. The interrogation stretched on, Tate peppering her with questions she refused to answer, her silence a shield against their lies. Hours bled into each other, the clock on the wall ticking past midnight, until Jordan burst in, his co-pilots, jacket wrinkled, his eyes wild with relief and rage. "Mom, I've got the bail," he said, tossing a stack of bills on the table, his voice trembling with the strain of the last few hours. Tate uncuffed her, grumbling, and Denise stood, her legs wobbly, her hips screaming as she leaned into Jordan's arm. "They faked it all," she whispered, her throat raw. "The video, the charges, everything." He nodded, guiding her out, the station's fluorescent glare fading into Boise's chilly night. "I know. We'll fight this." She clung to that, her son's strength a lifeline, until her phone buzzed as they reached his rental car. It was an email from her university, the subject line stark. "Suspension pending investigation." Her heart sank, her finger hovering over the screen as she read the dean's words. "Due to public disgrace from your arrest, you're suspended. Effective immediately." Jordan cursed, slamming the car door, but Denise just stared, the weight of it crushing her. She opened X, her hands trembling, and posted the truth. "Arrested on fake charges, footage doctored, university suspending me. This is racial targeting." The clip from the plane, the real one she'd saved before the Wi-Fi cut, went up too, and within minutes, it trended. Hashtags like Tatu Justice for Denise climbing fast. Supporters flooded in, retweets hitting 10,000, and she felt a spark of victory, her voice breaking through their gag. "We've got them now," she told Jordan, her breath fogging in the cold. He nodded, starting the engine, but her phone buzzed again, this time a text from an unknown number. "Nice try. Check your hotel." They raced to her Seattle hotel, a cheap spot she'd booked for the layover, and found chaos. A brick lay shattered on the carpet, glass from the broken window glinting under the lamp, and a note taped to it read, "Leave or die." Denise's knees buckled, Jordan catching her as she stared at the threat, her victory snuffed out by a new, sharper terror. She'd thought the arrest was their worst, that exposing the frame-up would turn the tide, but this was bigger, a claw, reaching beyond Boise. Jordan pulled her to the car, his voice tight. "We're getting a safe house. They're not stopping." Denise nodded, her cheek stinging as she touched the dried blood, her historian's mind cataloging this too. The brick, the note, the escalation. She'd won a battle, trending nationwide, but Greg and Tiffany had allies, shadows pulling strings she couldn't see. The hotel clerk gaped as they left, his "what happened?" unanswered in their rush. The safe house was a dingy apartment on Seattle's outskirts, its peeling wallpaper and musty couch a far cry from her university office, but it was shelter. Denise sank onto the cushions, her hip a furnace of pain, and whispered, "They've taken everything, Jordan." He knelt beside her, his hand warm on hers. "Not everything, Mom. We've got each other." But as the night deepened, the brick's message echoed, a promise of worse to come. Hey, what's your take on this gut punch twist? Comment number 1 if you're furious at Greg and Tiffany's dirty tricks, or number 2 if you think Denise should have stayed off X and laid low. Smash that like button if you're reeling from this frame-up, and subscribe to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Can you believe they'd stoop to bricks and death threats? Will Denise's trending post save her, or has she just painted a bigger target on her back? Stay tuned to find out what these monsters unleash next. Denise Carter hunched on the sagging couch in the Seattle safe house, her hip a relentless blaze of pain as she clutched a lukewarm mug of tea Jordan had brewed from a stale packet. The apartment's thin walls let in every creak of the night, the distant hum of traffic a faint lifeline to the world beyond this hideout. Her cheek still bore the crusted blood from the plane brawl, her blazer now a crumpled heap on the floor, and the brick's threat, "Leave or die," looped in her mind like a broken record. Jordan paced the tiny kitchen, his co-pilot's jacket slung over a chair, his broad shoulders tense as he muttered, "We're safe here, Mom. No one knows this place." She nodded, wanting to believe him. But the doxed address, the shattered hotel window, and that note gnawed at her, a historian's instinct telling her the storm wasn't over. She'd trended on X, her post exposing the fake arrest video racking up 20,000 retweets, and she'd thought it might shield her, force accountability. But the silence outside felt too heavy, too charged. A sharp crack split the air, followed by a roar that shook the windows, and Denise dropped her mug, tea splashing across the worn carpet. Jordan bolted to the window, ripping back the curtain, and cursed, his voice raw. "They torched your car." She stumbled to his side, her hip screaming, and peered out into the darkness. Her rental sedan, parked in the alley below, was an inferno. Flames licking the night sky, black smoke curling, thick and acrid. Shadows moved beyond the firelight, a dozen figures in hoodies and masks, their chants rising like a war cry. "Carter, Carter, get her out!" Denise's heart slammed against her ribs, her breath shallow as she gripped Jordan's arm. "How'd they find us?" she whispered, but he didn't answer, his eyes darting to the door as footsteps thundered up the stairwell. Jordan yanked her back, shoving the couch against the door as fists pounded the wood, splintering it with each blow. "We've got to move," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, and dragged her toward the back window, a rusted fire escape swaying outside. Denise's phone buzzed and she glanced at it, X alight with a fresh wave of hate. Found her hideout, time to pay. Greg Larson's fingerprints were all over this, his fake news twisting her trending post into a beacon for this mob. She'd shamed him, gotten Tiffany suspended after the airline launched a half-hearted investigation, and now they'd unleashed this. The door buckled, a gloved hand punching through, and Jordan shoved the window open, the metal groaning as he helped her onto the escape. Her hip locked, a white-hot spike of pain, but she gritted her teeth, climbing down rung by rung, the mob's shouts echoing above. They hit the alley, the car's heat blasting their faces, and Jordan pulled her toward a dumpster crouching low as headlights swept the street. "Safe house, my ass," he muttered, scanning for an exit. Denise's chest heaved, her victory over the suspension and arrest dissolving into this nightmare. She'd rallied supporters, forced the airline's hand, and thought she'd turned the tide. The mob's chants grew louder, boots stomping closer, and she whispered, "They won't stop, will they?" Jordan shook his head, his jaw tight when a new sound cut through the chaos. A crackling hiss, then a boom. A Molotov cocktail sailed from the mob, shattering against the safehouse wall, flames blooming orange and wild. Denise lunged back, her arm singeing as embers rained down, the stench of gasoline choking her lungs. Jordan grabbed her, sprinting toward a side street, the fire's roar drowning out the mob's screams. Her blazer sleeve smoldered, the fabric charred where the heat had kissed it, and she slapped it out, her hands trembling. They ducked into a shadowed lot, a chain-link fence rattling as they pressed against it, the mob's silhouettes fading, behind the blaze. Denise's breath came in gasps, her hip a furnace, but she pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Airline's goons torched my car, attacked our safe house," she posted, attaching a shaky video of the flames. It uploaded fast, X erupting again. Denise fights back, trending alongside Justice for Denise, supporters flooding in with "Stay strong" and "Sue them blind." She looked at Jordan, his face streaked with soot, and said, "They'll pay for this." He nodded, a fierce glint in his eyes, and for a moment she felt triumphant. The fire a rallying cry instead of a defeat. But the victory lasted seconds. Her phone pinged, a news alert from a local site. Audio leak. Denise Carter confesses to plane assault. She tapped it, dread pooling in her gut, and heard a distorted voice, unmistakably hers, saying, "I started it. I hit him first." It was fake, spliced from her plane plea. But the mob didn't care, their chants shifting to "confessed." "Get her!" Jordan snatched the phone, his voice low. "Greg did this. He's not done." Denise's knees wobbled, the safe house now a bonfire, the mob surging closer, drawn by the leak. She'd shamed them, gotten Tiffany off the plane. But Greg had flipped it again, his revenge a Molotov and a lie. The fence rattled as a figure climbed it, a ski mask glinting in the firelight, and Jordan yanked her toward a back exit, a narrow path between buildings. They slipped through, the mob's roar fading, but the air thickened with smoke, her lungs burning as she stumbled after him. The path dumped them onto a quiet street, a flickering street lamp casting long shadows, and Jordan flagged a cab, its tires squealing as they piled in. "Drive anywhere but here," he barked, and the cabbie, a grizzled man with a gray beard, peeled out, glancing at them in the rear view. "You folks in trouble?" Denise nodded, her voice hoarse. "More than you know." The cab sped toward the city's edge, the fire a distant glow, and she leaned into Jordan, her arm stinging where the embers had struck. She'd thought the brick was their limit, that trending on X would protect her. But this was war. A mob, unleashed by a man who wouldn't bow. The cab's radio crackled, a news anchor droning. Carter's confession has sparked outrage, and Denise's stomach twisted, knowing the safe house was just the start. Jordan booked a new hideout from his phone, a motel off the highway, its neon sign buzzing as they checked in under fake names. Denise collapsed onto the lumpy bed, her hip a throbbing mess, her arm red and raw from the burn. She'd rallied, a nation, forced an investigation, but Greg's audio leak had turned her shield into a sword. The mob his army. "They're not giving up," she said, her voice a rasp. Jordan knelt beside her, his hand squeezing hers. "Neither are we, Mom. We'll expose this too." She nodded, clinging to his resolve, but the motel window rattled, a faint shout, drifting from the road. The mob hadn't found them yet, but they were hunting, Greg's lies fueling their fire, and Denise knew the next blow would strike harder, deeper, a wound she might not dodge. Denise Carter lay on the motel bed, the lumpy mattress creaking under her weight as the neon sign outside buzzed like a swarm of angry bees. Her hip pulsed with a deep, gnawing ache, her arm still raw from the Molotov's embers, the skin blistered, and pink beneath her rolled-up sleeve. The room smelled of mildew and cigarette smoke, a far cry from the polished lecture halls she'd once commanded, and the faint shouts from the highway kept her on edge, a reminder of the mob that had torched her car and hunted her down. Jordan sat at the rickety table, his co-pilot's jacket draped over the chair, his fingers tapping furiously on his phone as he coordinated with a lawyer friend from flight school. "We're suing, Mom," he said, his voice a low growl. "The airline, Greg, Tiffany, all of them. That audio's fake. and we've got passenger testimonies from the plane to prove it." Denise nodded, her throat dry, clinging to the hope that the courts could unravel this nightmare. She'd posted about the safe house attack on X before. Crashing here, the video of flames licking the night sky hitting 30,000 retweets, and passengers from the flight had chimed in. Their shaky clips showing her shielding the kid, not starting the fight. The airline had suspended Tiffany, a small win, and Denise felt a flicker of triumph, her historian's mind plotting the next move. She sat up, wincing as her hip protested, and pulled her laptop from her singed carry-on. Its screen cracked, but functional. "Let's draft the lawsuit now," she said, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion tugging at her edges. "We've got momentum, Jordan. They can't bury this." He grinned, a flash of the boy who'd once soared paper planes across their cramped apartment, and they typed, compiling evidence. The real plane footage, the brick's threat, the mob's chance. By dawn, the lawsuit was filed. A 50-page beast emailed to a Seattle firm, and Denise thought, "We've got them cornered." The case gained traction fast, headlines screaming Professor sues airline over racial targeting, and X lit up with "Drugs, Denise fights back," trending alongside courtroom sketches of her limping into the preliminary hearing. She wore a fresh blazer, navy this time, her silver-streaked hair pulled tight, and faced the judge with a spine forged in decades of battles. Passenger witnesses testified, a young mom in a ponytail recounting how Denise saved her son, a businessman in a pinstripe suit, confirming Tiffany's planted headset. The airline squirmed, Greg sweating through his cheap suit on the stand, but then the tide shifted. A new figure strode into the courtroom, a silver-haired man in a tailored three-piece, his presence sucking the air from the room. Victor Hale, CEO of the airline, took the witness chair, his icy blue eyes locking onto Denise with a predator's calm. Victor's voice was silk over steel as he leaned into the mic. "Ms. Carter's a liability, Your Honor. We've uncovered evidence. She embezzled research funds from her university, falsified grants to fund personal trips. This lawsuit's a distraction from her crimes." Denise's stomach dropped, her hands gripping the table as her lawyer, a wiry woman named Clara, shot up. "Objection. This is irrelevant and unproven." But Victor slid a stack of documents, cross-forged bank statements and emails with her signature, detailing thousands siphoned from university accounts. The judge frowned, flipping through the pages, and Denise whispered, "That's not me. I've never seen those." Clara squeezed her shoulder, but the damage was done, the courtroom buzzing as reporters typed furiously, headlines shifting to "Professor's fraud exposed." Clara fought back, demanding forensic analysis, but the next blow landed harder. Her phone buzzed mid-hearing, a text from her firm. "We're dropping you. Hale's threatening our partners." Denise's breath caught, her lawyer's face paling as she muttered, "I'm sorry, Denise. I can't risk it." Clara bolted, leaving her alone at the table, the judge's gavel a hammer on her hope. Victor smirked from the stand, his silver hair glinting under the lights, and Denise realized this was no petty retaliation from Greg or Tiffany. This was corporate warfare, Hale wielding power she couldn't match. She limped out, the case teetering, and found Jordan waiting, his face grim. "They're burying us," she said, her voice a rasp, but he shook his head. "I'm testifying in D.C. tomorrow, Mom. Senate Committee on Airline Safety. I'll blow this open." Jordan flew out that night, a red-eye to the Capitol, and Denise holed up in a new motel, her hip a constant scream as she watched his plane climb on a tracking app. She'd thought the lawsuit was their lifeline, that Victor's frame-up would crack under scrutiny when her phone lit up with a news alert. Emergency landing in Nevada, co-pilot Jordan Carter's flight down. Her heart stopped, her fingers fumbling to call him, but the line went dead. The TV blared in the motel lobby, a reporter's voice cutting through static. "Engine failure forced the plane down outside Reno. No fatalities, but questions swirl about pilot error." Denise staggered to the screen, her vision blurring, as footage showed Jordan climbing from the wreckage, his jacket torn, his face smeared with ash. He was alive, thank God. But Victor's PR machine spun fast, a press release claiming Carter's negligence endangered lives, threatening his license. She called him, her voice trembling when he picked up. "Jordan, what happened?" He coughed, the wind howling behind him. Sabotage, Mom. Someone tampered with the engine. Hale's goons, I'd bet my wings on it. Denise's knees buckled, the motel's stained carpet rushing up as she sank down. The lawsuit had rattled them. Her witnesses had stung. And Victor had struck back. Not with bricks or mobs, but with a plane. Her son's life in the crosshairs. She'd dodged the mob's fire. Thought the courts were her shield. But this was a new level, a CEO's wrath-bending reality itself. Jordan's voice crackled through. I'm okay, Mom. I'll testify tomorrow, crash or not. She nodded, though he couldn't see, and whispered, Be careful. He's not done. The night stretched long, Denise pacing the motel room, her laptop open to X where supporters rallied, or Save Jordan trending alongside crash photos. She posted, My son's plane sabotaged, Hale's behind it, and the retweets soared, 40,000 in hours. But Victor's spin held firm, regulators eyeing Jordan's record. She thought they'd dodged disaster, that his survival was a win, until a new email hit her inbox, this time from the FAA. Captain Carter's license under review pending investigation. Her breath hitched, the room spinning as she gripped the table. Victor had turned the crash into a noose, strangling Jordan's career, and Denise knew this was his real play, a kingpin flexing muscle she couldn't counter. The motel's walls closed in, the neon buzzing louder, and she stared at the screen, her lawsuit crumbling, her son grounded, and Hale's shadow looming larger than ever. Denise Carter sat on the edge of the motel bed, the springs groaning under her as she stared at the FAA email on her cracked laptop screen. The words, license under review, searing into her like a brand. Her hip throbbed, a relentless drumbeat of pain, and her arm still stung from the Molotov burns, the blisters weeping under a makeshift bandage of motel towels. The room's stale air clung to her skin, the neon signs buzz a constant drone through the thin walls, and Jordan's voice echoed from the phone on speaker, hoarse from the Nevada crash. I testified, Mom, he said, wind crackling behind. Him had told the Senate everything, Hale's sabotage, the whole mess. They're listening. She'd clung to that, his survival a lifeline after Victor Hale's goons had nearly killed him mid-flight. But the motel TV blared a different story, a news anchor's polished voice declaring, pilot error suspected in Carter crash, license at risk. Her allies, the ones who'd rallied on X with me or Save Jordan, were crumbling, swayed by Victor's lies. She opened her laptop wider, scrolling X, and saw the shift. Posts that once cheered her lawsuit now questioned her. A flood of maybe she's guilty, and her son's a danger, drowning out the support. Her university, already wobbly after the suspension, emailed again. Termination effective. Immediately, misconduct confirmed. Denise's chest tightened, her breath shallow as she read the dean's cold words, citing the forged embezzlement docs Victor had planted. Jordan's grounding followed, the FAA bowing to Hale's PR spin, and she slammed the laptop shut, her hands trembling. They're turning on us, she whispered, but Jordan's voice cut through. Not everyone, Mom. I've got senators pushing back. We'll fix this. She wanted to believe him, her son's grit a mirror of her own, forged in years of battling bias. But the motel's shadows felt heavier, Victor's reach choking her world. Denise grabbed her phone, her fingers stiff, and booked a ride to an airline press conference in Seattle, a last-ditch shot to flip the narrative. She arrived at the downtown hotel, the lobby a swirl of glass and steel. Her navy blazer swapped for a borrowed sweater that hid her burns. Reporters swarmed, mics thrusting toward Victor as he stood on a dais, his silver hair gleaming under spotlights, his voice smooth as oil. We're cooperating with regulators, he said, but Carter's negligence can't be ignored. Denise pushed through, her hips screaming with each step, and crashed the mic, her voice raw but steady. Victor Hale framed me, sabotaged my son's plane. Here's proof. She held up her phone, playing leaked emails from a whistleblower, Hale's own words ordering the engine tampering. The room erupted, cameras flashing, and X lit up again. Lights tomorrow expose Hale trending as retweets hit 50,000 in minutes. For a moment, she stood tall, the crowd's gasps a balm to her wounds, and the airline caved, offering a settlement. $2 million to drop the suit. Denise felt the rush of victory, her allies roaring back online, senators tweeting support for Jordan's license. She limped out, Jordan meeting her in the lobby, his grin wide despite the ash still smudged on his jaw. "We did it, Mom," he said, hugging her tight. And she thought it was over. The mob's fire, the crash, Hale's lies all crumbling under her counterattack. They headed to a diner, her hip easing as she sank into a booth, sipping coffee that burned her tongue, savoring the taste of triumph. But her phone buzzed, a news alert shattering the calm. Tiffany Reed reinstated. Claims Carter stalked her. Denise's mug slipped, coffee splashing across the table as she read on. Tiffany, back with Hale's blessing, had filed a restraining order, alleging Denise harassed her after the suspension, complete with fake texts and photos of her lurking outside Tiffany's apartment. Jordan's face darkened, his fist hitting the table, but before he could speak, sirens wailed outside. Cops burst in, badges flashing, and the lead officer, a burly man with a shaved head, barked, "Denise Carter, you're under arrest for drug possession." She froze, her mind blank as they yanked her up, her hip buckling under the strain. "Drugs? I don't even smoke," she shouted, but they shoved her against the wall, a baggie of white powder tumbling from her sweater pocket, planted there. In the chaos of the press conference, Jordan lunged, shouting, "That's not hers!" But the cops pushed him back, cuffing her wrists tighter than Boise, the metal cutting into her burns. They dragged her to a squad car, the diner's patrons, staring, some filming, others whispering. "Told you she was trouble." The car peeled out, Seattle's rain-streaked streets blurring past, and Denise's hope shattered, the settlement, the trending post, all dust under Victor's boot. Tiffany's restraining order was the bait, the drugs, the trap, and Hale had flipped her win into a cell. The station loomed, its gray walls swallowing her as they shoved her inside, Jordan's helpless yells fading behind. She'd crashed their press conference, exposed their emails, but Victor's machine roared back, crushing her with a lie bigger than the plane sabotage, her spirit teetering as the cell door clanged shut. "Hey, can you feel the sting of this? Betrayal? Comment number 1 if you're screaming at how Tiffany and Hale keep twisting the knife, or number 2 if you think Denise pushed too hard crashing that conference. Slam that like button if you're stunned by this drug plant, and subscribe to catch every ruthless turn ahead. Wasn't that settlement supposed to end this? How much lower can Victor sink to bury Denise, and will Jordan pull her out of this pit? Keep watching to see how this war explodes next. Denise Carter sat on the edge of a steel bunk in a Seattle jail cell, the concrete walls radiating a chill that seeped into her bones, her hip a blazing knot of agony with every shallow breath. The cuffs had left red welts on her wrists, her blazer swapped for an orange jumpsuit that chafed her Molotov-burned arm, the blisters weeping beneath the coarse fabric. The cell stank of bleach and despair, a single flickering bulb casting jagged shadows, and the distant clang of doors echoed like a death knell. She'd been dragged from the diner, the planted drugs, a baggie of powder she'd never touched, clutched in a cop's gloved hand as evidence of her guilt. Tiffany Reed's restraining order had lured her into this trap, Victor Hale's shadow stretching from the airline's boardroom to this cage, and Denise's mind reeled, tracing the thread from the gate denial to this suffocating box. The cell, door rattled and 2 guards strode in, their boots scuffing the floor, their faces hard under buzz cuts and sneers. The taller one, a slab of muscle with a scar slicing his eyebrow, loomed over her, his badge glinting. "Ramirez." "On your feet, Carter," he barked, his voice a gravelly snarl. "You've got a reputation, starting fights on planes." Denise stood, her legs trembling, and shot back. "I didn't start anything, and those drugs aren't mine. You know that." Ramirez smirked, cracking his knuckles, and grabbed her arm, twisting it until she gasped, her burns screaming under his grip. "Resisting already? Bad move." Before she could protest, his fist slammed into her ribs, a dull thud that stole her breath, and she crumpled, the bunk's edge catching her fall. The second guard, wiry with a pockmarked face, laughed, a high-pitched cackle, and kicked her shin, the pain exploding up her leg. "That's for mouthing off," he said, his voice dripping with glee. Denise curled into herself, her historian's mind detaching, cataloging the blows like data. Ramirez's punch, the kick, the racist edge in their grins. She'd faced bias before, subtle slights in ivory towers, but this was raw, physical, a beating meant to break her. They stepped back, Ramirez spitting on the floor, a wet glob landing near her hand. "Stay down, troublemaker," he muttered, and they swaggered out, the door slamming shut, leaving her gasping, blood trickling from a split lip she hadn't felt until now. Outside, Jordan burned the midnight oil, his rental car parked blocks. From the station, his phone a lifeline as he dug into Tiffany's past. He'd lost his captain's stripes, his license teetered, but he wouldn't lose her. A buddy from flight school, now a PI, sent a gold mine. Tiffany's rap sheet buried under a fake name, showing extortion charges from a decade back, blackmailing a small-town mayor. Jordan grinned, a fierce slash across his soot-streaked face, and emailed it to the airline, the press, X everywhere. "Tiffany Reed's a fraud," he posted, the file attached, and it hit like a bomb. 50,000 retweets in hours. Tiffany exposed, trending as the airline fired her again, this time for good. He stormed the station, slamming the evidence on the desk and demanded her release. "She's innocent, and you've got no case." The guards dragged Denise out at dawn, her ribs a cage of fire, her lips swollen, and uncuffed her with a grunt. "You're free, Carter." "For now," Ramirez said, his smirk gone, replaced by a scowl as Jordan rushed in, his arms wrapping around her. She winced, the hug pressing her bruises, but clung to him, her voice a rasp. "You did it, Jordan." He nodded, guiding her to the car, the morning rain washing the blood from her face. "Tiffany's toast, Mom." X blew it open. She sank into the passenger seat, relief flooding her, the beating a price for this win. They'd crushed Tiffany, cleared her name on the drugs, and she thought, "We're back in the fight." The car rolled toward a new motel, her spirit lifting, when a crack split the air, a bullet whizzing past her window, grazing her shoulder with a hot sting. Denise ducked, blood seeping through her jumpsuit, her scream swallowed by Jordan's shout as he floored the gas. The parking lot blurred, tires squealing on wet asphalt, and she pressed her hand to the wound, shallow but sharp, her pulse hammering. "Who was that?" she gasped, but Jordan's eyes flicked to the rear view, his voice tight. "Hale, he's hired someone." The shooter vanished, a shadow melting into the rain, and Denise's mind raced, piecing it together. She'd won, gotten Tiffany fired, walked free. But Victor wouldn't let it stand. This was his hitman, a step beyond mobs and planes, a gun aimed at her heart. They screeched into the motel lot, Jordan yanking her inside, the clerk gaping as they bolted past. She collapsed on the bed, her shoulder oozing, her ribs throbbing, and stared at the ceiling, paranoia creeping in. Jordan patched her up, his hand steady with a first aid kit from the car, but his face was pale, his voice low. "He's not random, Mom. Victor's playing for keeps." Denise nodded, the historian in her tracing the escalation. Gate denial, mob fire, plane crash, now bullets. She'd thought the prison was rock bottom, that Jordan's dig on Tiffany would turn the tide. But this was a new abyss, a killer stalking her in broad daylight. The motel's curtains fluttered, rain tapping the glass, and she scanned the shadows, every creak a threat. Victor's PR pinned the shot as a random attack, a lie X swallowed whole, her trending post buried under fresh doubt. She'd survived the guards, walked free, but Hale's hitman was loose. His next move a blade she couldn't see, and Denise knew this war had just gone lethal. Denise Carter slumped against the motel room's chipped headboard, the damp Seattle rain drumming a relentless beat on the window as blood seeped from the shallow graze on her shoulder, staining the borrowed sweatshirt Jordan had draped over her. Her hip burned with a deep grinding ache, her ribs ached from the jail guard's fists, and the prison jumpsuit lay crumpled in a corner, replaced by jeans and a sweater that smelled faintly of mothballs. The hitman's bullet had missed her, heart by inches, a warning shot from Victor Hale's unseen claw, and the motel's flickering lamp cast jagged shadows across the walls, turning every creak into a threat. Jordan knelt beside her, his hands steady as he pressed a gauze pad to her wound, his co-pilot's jacket slung over the chair, its torn sleeve a relic of the Nevada crash. "We're ending this, Mom," he said, his voice a low rumble of resolve. Hale's gone too far. Denise nodded, her swollen lips stinging as she spoke, her historian's mind churning through the chaos. The gate denial, the mob's fire, the plane sabotage, now a gunman in the rain. She'd survived the prison beating, walked free thanks to Jordan's dig on Tiffany, but Victor's hitman had flipped her fleeting win into a hunt. "We need proof," she rasped, pulling her cracked laptop from the carry-on, its screen spider-webbed but glowing. Something big enough to bury him. Jordan's eyes lit up, a spark of the kid who'd once hacked his school's grading system for fun, and he plugged in a USB drive, a gift from his PI buddy. "This'll get us into Hale's server. If he ordered that shot, it's there." They hunched over the screen, the motel's Wi-Fi stuttering as they breached the airline's firewall. Lines of code scrolling like a digital battlefield. Hours bled into the night, the rain a steady roar, and Denise's fingers flew across the keys, her pain dulled by adrenaline. They hit gold, an encrypted email chain, Victor's name in bold, instructing a fixer named Razor to eliminate the Carter problem, plane first, bullets if needed. Her breath caught, her shoulder throbbing as she saved the file. A smoking gun that tied Hale to the crash and the hit. Jordan grinned, fierce and wild, and uploaded it to X, the post screaming, "Victor Hale ordered my son's plane sabotaged. Hired a hitman to kill me. Here's the proof." It exploded, 60,000 retweets in an hour. When Hale the Killer trending as federal probes launched, senators howling for blood. Denise felt the rush, her voice breaking through the lies, and whispered, "We've got him." Morning broke gray and wet, the motel TV blaring news of Victor's arrest. His silver hair mussed as cuffs snapped on his wrists outside the airline's HQ. Denise stood, her hip buckling but her spirit soaring, and Jordan hugged her, his laugh, a rare burst of light. "He's done, Mom. Feds are tearing his empire apart." She thought it was over, the beating, the bullet, all avenged by their hack, when her phone rang, an unknown number flashing. She answered, her voice wary, and a gravelly voice snarled, "Retract it all, or your boy's dead." Her heart stopped, the line clicking dead, and Jordan's grin faded as she whispered, "They've got you." He checked X, his face paling, a blurry photo of him tied up, a warehouse backdrop posted by an anonymous account with Carter's Next, captioned below. Denise's knees gave out, the laptop tumbling as she clutched the table, her historian's calm shattering. Victor was in cuffs, but his machine roared on, snatching Jordan from a gas station run she hadn't noticed he'd taken. She replayed the call, the voice cold and precise, and realized this was the hitman, Razor, striking from the shadows. "I'll retract it," she choked out, dialing a local news station, her hands shaking as she went live. "The emails were fake I made. It up, leave my son alone." The anchor blinked, stunned, and X erupted, her supporters reeling. Wang's Denise lied trending as the feds paused their probe. She'd saved Jordan, she thought, her voice a lifeline, when a text hit. "Warehouse on Pier 17 now." She grabbed Jordan's keys, her hips screaming as she limped to the car, the rain soaking her through as she sped to the waterfront. The warehouse loomed, a rusted hulk of steel and salt, and she burst in, finding Jordan bound to a chair, his face bruised, his eyes wide with relief. Razor stood beside him, a lean man in a black coat, his pistol glinting under a bare bulb. "Smart move, retracting," he said, his voice the same gravel from the call. "Hale's free now, thanks to you." Denise froze, her stomach lurching, as she realized the twist. Her lie had sprung Victor from jail, his lawyer spinning it as false evidence. Razor cut Jordan loose, shoving him toward her, and she hugged him tight, her shoulder bleeding anew. But the hitman smirked, slipping out. "Tell Hale this isn't over," she spat, but he was gone, the warehouse empty. They stumbled to the car, Jordan's breath ragged, and she drove, her mind racing. She'd hacked Victor's server, nailed him with proof, and thought the feds had him cold. But the kidnapping flipped it, her retraction a forced surrender that freed the beast. Jordan coughed, wiping blood from his lip. "We've still got the original file, Mom. We can fix this." She nodded, her eyes on the road, and pulled out her phone, secretly recording the whole trade, Razor's voice clear. "Hale's free now thanks to you." She saved it, a hidden ace. But the motel loomed ahead, and news alerts confirmed Victor's release, his smug face back on TV. She'd saved Jordan, dodged the hitman, but Hale was loose. His vow of revenge, a storm cloud swelling on the horizon, darker and deadlier than ever. Denise Carter gripped the steering wheel of Jordan's rental car, her knuckles white as she navigated Seattle's rain-slick streets, the wipers slashing through a downpour that blurred the city into a smear of lights. Her shoulder throbbed, where the hitman's bullet had grazed her, the gauze soaked red beneath her sweater, and her hip felt like a rusty hinge, grinding with every shift of her weight. Jordan slumped beside her, his face bruised from the warehouse ordeal, his breath uneven as he rubbed his wrists, still raw from the ropes Razor had cut away. The motel loomed ahead, its neon sign a flickering beacon, but the recording on her phone burned hotter in her pocket. Razor's voice admitting, "Hale's free now thanks to you." She'd retracted the hacked emails to save Jordan, sprung Victor from jail, but this audio was her ace, a blade to plunge back into the beast. "We're airing it," she said, her voice a hoarse thread of steel. "He's not walking away." Jordan nodded, his jaw tight, and fished his phone from his jacket, uploading the clip to X as they pulled into the motel lot. "Victor Hale's hitman confesses he's behind it all," he posted, the audio attached, and it roared through the platform, 70,000 retweets in minutes. Quar Hale exposed, trending anew. They stumbled into the room, the damp carpet squishing under their boots, and flipped on the TV. News anchors scrambling as the feds rearrested Victor, his silver hair wild in handcuffs outside his mansion. Denise sank onto the bed, her ribs aching from the prison beating, and felt a surge of triumph, her historian's mind cataloging the win. The mob's fire, the plane crash, the hitman, all crumbling under this blow. "He's done, Jordan," she said, her swollen lip cracking as she smiled. "We've cleared you, me, everything." The TV flashed courtroom footage hours later, Victor's lawyer flailing as the judge played the recording, Razor's gravelly confession echoing through the chamber. Denise stood at home now, a modest Seattle rental they'd secured after the motel, her navy blazer back on, her burns bandaged properly. The university reinstated her, the FAA restored Jordan's license, and she thought the war was won. Her name a beacon on X with 80,000 supporters cheering torture justice for Denise. She brewed coffee, the rich scent filling the kitchen, and handed Jordan a mug, his captain's stripes gleaming again on a fresh uniform. "Senior captain now," he said, grinning, and she hugged him, her shoulders stiff but healing, believing the nightmare had finally lifted. But the front door creaked open, a sound too soft, too wrong, and Denise spun, her mug shattering on the tile as Tiffany Reed stepped in, her blonde ponytail gone, hair cropped short and dyed black, her eyes wild with a fury that froze the air. A kitchen knife glinted in her hand, its blade catching the light as she lunged, screaming, "You ruined my life, Carter!" Denise stumbled back, her hip buckling, coffee splashing her jeans as she hit the counter. The pain, a white-hot flare. Jordan dove between them, his arm outstretched, and tackled Tiffany, the knife slashing the air inches from Denise's chest. They crashed to the floor, a tangle of limbs and rage, the blade skittering across the tile as he pinned her wrists, his voice a roar. "Drop it, Tiffany, it's over." Denise grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers, her breath ragged as she shouted, "Intruder with a knife, hurry!" Tiffany thrashed, her screams a banshee wail of, "Hale promised me everything, you took it all." Jordan held her down, his knee pressing her back, sweat beading on his brow as sirens wailed closer. Denise's heart pounded, her historian's calm shattered by the blade's gleam. The realization that Victor's firing of Tiffany had snapped her, turned her into this unhinged avenger. The cops burst in, a swarm of blue uniforms, and cuffed Tiffany, her black hair wild as she spat. "You'll pay, Carter, you'll see." They dragged her out, the knife bagged as evidence, and Denise sank against the wall, her legs jelly, her victory snatched by this ambush. Jordan helped her to the couch, his hands trembling as he checked her for cuts, finding only coffee burns on her shin. "She's gone, Mom. We're safe," he said, but the cops lingered, their radios crackling with a call that made her blood run cold. The lead officer, a stocky woman with a buzz cut, turned to her, her voice flat. "Ms. Carter, you're under arrest for instigating this. Hale's lawyer says you provoked her and we've got orders." Denise's jaw dropped, her ribs a cage of fire as they cuffed her, the metal cold against her welts. "Provoked? She broke in with a knife," she shouted, but they shoved her toward the squad car, Jordan's yells echoing. "This is Hale's last play, let her go." The door slammed, the rain soaking her as they drove, the station's gray bulk swallowing her again. She sat in a new cell, smaller, danker, the walls slick with mold, her mind spinning. She'd aired the recording, nailed Victor, cleared their names, but Tiffany's attack flipped it, Hale's bribe bending the law one last time. Her shoulder oozed, her hip locked, and her spirit teetered, the cuffs a weight she couldn't shake. Jordan fought outside, she knew, his voice a lifeline she couldn't hear, but the villains seemed invincible, their claws sinking deeper with every wind she clawed back. The guard outside smirked, a shadow through the bars, and Denise pressed, her forehead to the steel, whispering, "Not yet, Hale. Not yet." The cell's chill seeped in, her coffee-soaked jeans clinging to her legs, and she braced for the next blow, knowing this wasn't the end. Not with Victor's machine still grinding. Denise Carter slumped against the mold-slick wall of the Seattle jail cell, the damp air clawing at her lungs as her hip roared with a pain that felt like shards of glass grinding beneath her skin. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame, soaked with rain and coffee from Tiffany Reed's ambush, its coarse fabric chafing the still weeping burns on her arm. Her shoulder bled through the gauze, a slow seep from the hitman's graze, and her ribs ached from the prison guards earlier. Blows, each breath a shallow stab. The cell's single bulb buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow across the concrete, and the guard's smirk lingered beyond the bars, a silent taunt as she replayed the chaos. Tiffany's knife, Jordan's tackle, the cop's cuffs snapping, on her wrists over Victor Hale's last bribe. She'd aired the hitman's recording, nailed Victor back into cuffs, cleared their names, but this arrest twisted it all. Hale's machine bending justice into a noose. The door clanged open, and Jordan burst in, his captain's uniform wrinkled, his face a storm of fury and relief as he waved a court order. "They're letting you go, Mom," he said, his voice raw. The recording held up, Tiffany confessed under pressure. "Hale's done." 2 officers followed, their expressions sour as they uncuffed her, the metal scraping her welts raw. She stood, her legs wobbly, and leaned into Jordan's arm, the historian in her cataloging the win. Victor's rearrest, Tiffany's breakdown on the stand, admitting Hale's orders to attack. The judge had played her audio, Razor's gravelly, "Hale's free now," echoing through the courtroom, and the feds sealed it. Victor locked in a federal pen this time, no bail. Denise limped out, the station's fluorescent glare fading into the gray drizzle outside, and Jordan grinned, his stripes gleaming anew. "Senior Captain, Mom. And you're back at the university. We're clear." They drove to their Seattle rental, a squat brick house on a quiet street, the rain easing as dusk painted the sky in bruised purple hues. Denise sank into the couch, her hip easing slightly on the cushions, and Jordan brewed tea. The kettle's whistle a soft comfort after weeks of sirens and screams. Her phone buzzed with X notifications. 90,000 followers cheering Dr. Denise vindicated. The university's reinstatement letter pinned to her profile. The FAA's license restoration for Jordan trending alongside. She sipped the tea, its warmth seeping into her battered body, and smiled, a cracked but real curve of her lips. "We did it, Jordan," she said, her voice steady for the first time in months. "Hale's gone. Tiffany's gone. We're whole." He sat beside her, his hand warm on hers, and nodded, the weight of the war lifting. Their victory a hard-won dawn. The night settled, the house quiet save for the tick of a clock, and Denise changed into fresh clothes, a soft sweater and slacks, the jumpsuit tossed in the trash. She'd thought the knife was Hale's last gasp, that her arrest was his final twist, but the courts had flipped it, her recording a sledgehammer to his empire. Jordan crashed on the guest bed, his snores a faint rumble through the wall, and she locked the doors, her historian's caution lingering despite the win. She stepped outside, the air crisp with salt from the nearby sound, and breathed deep, the stars peeking through the clouds, a promise of peace. The rental's porch light flickered, casting a warm glow, and she turned to head back in, her shoulders stiff but manageable, when a roar erupted, a wall of heat slamming her back. Flames exploded from the house, windows shattering in a cascade of glass as fire swallowed the brick walls, a deafening blast that threw her to the lawn, her ears ringing. She scrambled up, her hip locking, her burns searing anew as she screamed. "Jordan!" Smoke choked the air, thick and black, and she lunged toward the blaze, her sweater catching embers, when a figure emerged from the shadows, a lean man in a hoodie, his face obscured. He grabbed her arm, his grip iron, and whispered, "This isn't over, Carter." His voice a low hiss that cut through the crackling inferno. She twisted, her historian's mind flashing to Victor, but his eyes glinted, a shade too familiar. And he said, "I'm his son. You took my father. Now I take everything." He shoved her down, vanishing into the night as sirens wailed, the fire swallowing her home. Denise crawled back, her lungs burning, her eyes streaming as the flames devoured the rental, Jordan's silhouette staggering from the back door, coughing, alive. She reached him, pulling him to the grass, his uniform singed, his face streaked with ash. "Mom, what the hell?" he gasped, and she clutched him, her voice a sob. "Victor's son. He's coming for us." The fire trucks roared in, hoses blasting, but the house was gone, a smoldering husk of their victory, and Denise stared into the dark, the stranger's whisper a blade in her gut. She'd cleared their names, locked Victor away, thought the war was won, but this was the reversal. A new villain rising from the ashes, his arson a vow of vengeance deeper than his father's. They sat on the curb, blankets draped over them by a paramedic, the crowd gathering as neighbors gaped at the ruin. Jordan's hand tightened on hers, his voice a growl. "We'll find him, Mom. He doesn't get to do this." She nodded, her shoulder oozing, her hip a wreck, but her spirit flared, a historian's resolve against a new foe. The flames died. Under the water, smoke curling into the sky, and she pulled out her phone, its screen cracked but alive, posting, "House burned, Victor Hale's son at large. The fight's not over." It hit X, 100,000 retweets in an hour. Hale legacy trending as the nation woke to this twist. She'd beaten Victor, survived Tiffany, but this shadow was fresh. His strike a gut punch that left her reeling, the war stretching into a horizon she couldn't see. The saga of Denise Carter and flight attendant denies black woman boarding assistance, freezes when captain says she's his mother, offers raw, unflinching lessons about resilience, systemic racism, and the cost of fighting back. First, it shows that courage isn't a straight path to victory. Denise and Jordan faced escalating horrors, gate denials, mob attacks, plane sabotage, and arson, each blow a testament to how deeply prejudice can root itself in power structures. Her journey as a black historian battling a racist airline empire reveals that standing up often invites fiercer retaliation, yet surrender isn't an option. Second, it exposes the fragility of public support. X's trending hashtags flipped, from Mature Justice for Denise to Mature Denise lied in hours, proving truth can twist under manipulation. Third, it underscores the power of evidence. Denise's recordings toppled Victor Hale, but only after brutal sacrifice, teaching us persistence pays, even when the odds stack higher with every win. Finally, the shocking rise of Hale's son proves evil doesn't die easy. One villain falls, another emerges, a cycle Denise vows to break. This isn't just a tale of survival, it's a mirror to our world, where racism stories like Denise's unfold daily, often unseen. It demands we question who controls justice and how far we'd go to reclaim it. So, what do you take from this? Comment below. Would you fight like Denise, or has this shaken your faith in the system? Hit like if her grit inspires you, subscribe to catch more racism stories that hit hard, and share to spark the conversation. Thanks for riding this roller coaster with us. May you find strength in your own battles and never let the fire of justice dim.